Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video, I'm going to give you a short tour of Remix IDE where we write all our Solidity code. Right, let's get started. First, head on to Google and write Remix IDE. You can see the first link that you get is Remix Ethereum IDE. So click on this first link and it will head on to this page. You can very well see that this is the official page of Remix IDE and there is no requirement of any login or something. Next is when you are welcomed on this brilliant page, you will see a lot many things here. So you can create new files, you can create some workspaces, you can download your backup, you can restore your backup, but that's the other thing. You'll also have some resources with GitHub or some documentation related to Remix ID, which we can just check out. Also, it has some featured plugins like Solidity, Starknet, Sol Hint Linter, and whatnot. But before going ahead and exploring Remix a bit more, let me show you the official documentation. So this is the remix documentation that is also provided on some Solidity page as well. It looks like much on the Solidity page, right? So it's an open source web and desktop application. And of course, you can download Remix on your local machine as well. It fosters fast development cycle and has a rich set of plugins with intuitive GUIs. Remix is used for entire journey of contract development as well as act as a playground for learning and teaching Ethereum. So it's a part of Remix project, which is a platform for development of tools that use a plugin architecture. And of course, it's an open source tool which helps to write Solidity contracts straight from the browser. So no anything required. It's written in JavaScript, supports both usage in browser, but runs locally and in a desktop version, and it has module for testing, debugging, and deploying smart contracts and much more. So here are some useful links which you can see, and you can maybe link. So if you want to link Remix to GitHub or Remix to Medium or Twitter, you can just go ahead and read through these links. Heading back to our original Remix page, you can see here there is Medium as well as Twitter, so you can always link your Remix to them. And this is the home page. So let me show you the workspace where all your files and your code lives. So click on File Explorers and it will open something like this. Then in the workspaces, you can click on this create one to create a new workspace. You can edit the name of workspace or you can just delete some of the workspace. So by default, you will be just going to have a code sample workspace. So this is the by default code sample workspace, and sometimes it's also called a default workspace because all by default you'll be welcomed into the default workspace, and simultaneously if you want to create your separate workspace for different works, you can do that. Then you, in the second thing, you have a Solidity compiler. So Solidity compiler basically helps you to compile your all code that you write. So by default, it takes in language as Solidity and the version of the compiler, which compiler you're using, and the EVM version. So whichever EVM version you're running on, it's default, but you can just change it to London and Istanbul with some other as well, right? So I'll just keep it default by state. And then if you have a file selected, you've written some code and you want to compile it, by default it captures that file that's opened and it helps you to compile that file. Next is deploy and run transactions, the third one. It is basically for deploying and running your code. So whichever code or smart contract you're written, you can just deploy and run it. But before running and deploying it, you have to compile it like the previous step. So you have to choose the environment. Maybe you can work on JavaScript VM that's in London, or Web3 provider, or injected Web3, or a JavaScript VM from Berlin, right? Then here's an account. So you can add multiple accounts and it gives you different addresses with some ether that you can use, and you can make some basic transactions. They're not money, but just some transactions that can helpful uh, to check your examples. Then you have some gas limit here, a value in V, or some ethers that you can variedly use, and we'll be using them in the upcoming videos with some examples. Then you have some at address here, so where you can load the contract address, and you can load your contract directly into it if you have its address. It's not much used, but it's quite a useful thing. So any contract that you deploy over here are shown instantly over here. I'll give you an example in a bit. These contracts that you deploy are all recorded in a recorded transactions, and they show up here, right? Then if you have some bugs, you can debug here. You have a start and stop debugger, so you can just point out the points where you want to debug it, and then you can work upon it. Then you have a Solidity static analysis, so it keeps a track of your gas, economy, ERC, and security and miscellaneous. So any here and there security miss and match, it all takes care of that in the analysis. Then we have a Solidity unit testing that tests your smart contract in Solidity. So you can generate and load your selected directory files, test files, right? And finally, you have a dgit that is helpful for, so it's actually, dgit here is a plugin that is used to connect Remix to GitHub, so that I can push all my code from Remix to GitHub. It helps. And finally, you can see the small plugin here. It's a plugin manager where you get all your plugins. So currently I'm using dgit for activation that uses to connect Remix to GitHub. And finally, some settings over here that I really use. But let's head on to some files and to my Solidity workspace. Let me show you an example of Hello World. Well, I'll be covering this in the next as well. So in the next video, upcoming video, you'll see how we work upon Hello World. So I'll be explaining this code in that video. But let's just go ahead and compile Hello World. So you can see it's automatically detected which file I want to compile. So I'll just click on compile, and it's done. It hardly takes some seconds, right? And then I can just go ahead and click on deploy in deploy and run transactions, and it keeps a track over here, so you can debug it and you can check all the deployments and what kind of executions has taken place. You can check over here. So it gives you from address to address, some transaction cost, execution cost, how much gas did it use, some input address, logs and values, how much value was transferred as well. Then you can just click over here and you can see there's a button. That's basically when you write something or you have declared a variable, you can call that variable and you can print out. So it says hello world. So that's all for this little tour to Solidity and Remix IDE. I hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for the furthermore videos as we dig deep into Solidity. Till then, keep learning and thank you.